In the Emerald Isle, something unexplainable is happening. Tonight, prepare to witness the most frightening event in horror podcast history. A journey into the depths of horror history. First Class Horror presents the Class Horror Cast. Evil wears many masks, but pure horror wears only one. Support First Class Horror on Patreon for as little as $1. Can't get enough of the horror? Carve yourself a deal from official merchandise, only on Teespring. Join us on all social media at First Class Horror. We have such sights to show you.
Ben Scrivens is the founder and president of Fright Rags. Fright Rags blend all the nostalgic elements of horror into a high-quality product, from tees and hoodies to wax packs and socks, all from your favourite franchises such as Halloween, Creepshow, Bob Briggs, American Werewolf in London, and many more. Ben and I discussed the long journey to making this a reality and done a fair amount of geeking out along the way. There are some killer lessons here, and I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Where did it all start for you, or where did you grow up? How was your introduction into horror, I guess?
Well, I guess you could say that it started on October 30th, 1981. And that was the day I saw Halloween for the first time. And I was only 4, so it wasn't like I was that old, but we were at a friend's house, my parents and my siblings. We had a Halloween party at our friend's house, and I was bored. I mean, I was 4. I wanted to go home. There was no one for me to play with because all the kids were older than me, because I'm the youngest of 4 anyway. So I was nagging my mom, like, hey, can we go home? And like any good 80s parent, she was like, just go watch TV. Go plop yourself down in front of the TV. So I did, and when I turned it on, this movie came on. And, up until that point, I was used to, Popeye or Scooby-Doo or, whatever. And this movie comes on, and the music obviously got to me. And I don't remember being, like, horrified or too afraid by it, but I was mesmerized. Like, I don't think I knew enough to be afraid, if that makes sense, because I was too young. Mm-hmm. As I got older, it started to scare me more. But that first initial viewing, I just remember seeing Michael and hearing the music. And for whatever reason, it just imprinted something onto my brain to say, ooh, watch more of that. Like, where can I see more of something like that? And, as I got older, I obviously would start seeing, the movie stores, the rental stores pop up, and I would see the horror section and start perusing that section and getting into all of those things and reading Fangoria. So basically, from that point on, I was into it. And I had a couple friends that were into it, but I was the person that spearheaded that whole thing. Like, I was the person into horror, And then in terms of Fright Rags, I grew up, I was always creative. I always tried to make things. I never sold anything or had any businesses or anything like that. It was just, but I was always interested in making something, whether it was writing stories or making whatever. And sort of as a side, I was also kind of particular in the type of T-shirts that I liked. If we would go on vacation and I would want a shirt from like Disney World or Busch Gardens or something like that, I would want to make sure it was the right one to me, like subjectively, like I was picky in that sense, because I just liked certain things. And I never really had a vocabulary for that until I went to college, where I studied graphic design. And I also studied a little bit of screen printing for T-shirts, and I had took it in high school and college, but it was like secondary to the overall programs I was in. So fast forward to 2003, and I had been working for a little while as a graphic designer, but it was doing stuff for laptop bags, which was fun. They were great bags, but I just, it's a little boring every day. Mm-hmm. And I was still, my then girlfriend, who was not my wife, we were living together in an apartment. We didn't have kids yet. We weren't married yet. So there's a lot more time when when you don't have that stuff to think about. So I would spend a lot of my free time on these message boards and forums and things, because this is pre-social media and Facebook and Instagram, and converse with a lot of people that made these fan-made items like Freddy Krueger glove or a Jason mask or a Michael Myers mask. And I loved those things because they looked so much better than what you could buy at the stores. I mean, they were like $400, but still, like, that looked like Michael. You know, I want that mask, or that's an actual Freddy glove. So I was like, man, I want to do something like cool like that. What can I do? And I'm not going to be able to make masks in my, apartment or whatever. Not that I can do that anyway, but I'm like, ooh, what if I designed some t-shirts? And I looked up, it was kind of a confluence of things. I looked up what was going on with horror t-shirts, because I had never really owned a horror t-shirt other than like a promotional Halloween shirt that I think the Anchor Bay released. And I saw a website called Rotten Cotton, which had been around for a little bit. I wasn't really familiar with them until I looked them up. And they had some cool stuff, but it really didn't speak to me. It was mostly just black and white versions of the poster art on t-shirts. And that for me personally, I was like, I just want something different. So then I came up with it around the same time. I came up with this idea, a parody idea, and it was based on the "What Would Jesus Do" sort of. I don't know if it's a movement, but that sort of campaign, if you will, at the time. What would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? There's bumper stickers and all this other stuff. So I thought, well, what if I did WW and then I put a hockey mask and then a D and a question mark? So it basically read, what would Jason do? And I thought it was so funny, but I just assumed it had been done before, and I scoured the internet and I couldn't find any evidence to see where this was done. So I'm like, ooh, that's a fun idea. And then what if I just took the hockey mask and blew it up on a shirt? So there was no words. It was just a hockey mask. And what if I made a Michael Myers look and just call it Trick or Treat and not even say Halloween? So I had these ideas, and my buddy Justin Mabry, who ran a forum called Night Owl Productions, he made amazing masks, and he actually parlayed that into creating Trick or Treat Studios, which makes amazing masks. And they're sold everywhere now. Mm-hmm. So he and I were great friends because of that forum. And he's like, hey, I like your designs. You should put them on my board and see if people are interested. I'm like, if you don't mind me doing that. I didn't have an audience. So he allowed me to post them on his site, his forum. And people were like, yeah, I would totally buy that. So I was like, I guess I'm going to make some shirts. So I thought of a name, Fright Rags, and I bought a domain name, and I
not to cut you off there. That name, like, now, obviously, like, this has been going so long and it's so popular that, like, the name Fright Rags to, at least horror movie fans is like Adidas or Nike. I feel like it's at the top, and like it seems like such a I don't know. I just feel like that now, for people who are into merchandise and stuff, that Fright Rags is like a household name. That's the word I was looking for. How did that come into your mind? Because it seems like such an obvious choice.
No, and I appreciate you saying that, because I'll be completely honest. If I had a crystal ball and I could have predicted the future, I probably would have selected a different name. And the reason why is because I feel like sometimes Fright Rags is it's almost limiting, because people just assume t-shirts, and we're much more than that now. But honestly, when I first came up with even the idea of doing a website, I just knew I had to have a place for people to go to order what I was putting out. And it wasn't because I thought I was going to create some business that eventually I would go on and do it full time. It was, I had these ideas for these 3 t-shirts. Someone needs to have a place to go order them. Where am I going to point them to? So, yeah, and of course, having a graphic design background and branding and stuff, I wanted it to be cool or whatever, or sound at least interesting. But I just kind of put it in one column, like words that related to horror. And then one other column, I kind of put just words related to t-shirts. And I started drawing lines back and forth. And I just said, Fright Rags. Oh, that's kind of cool. And I don't even know why I did this. I mean, we're talking 2003. So I just decided to buy the fright-rags.com as opposed to the one word Fright Rags, which, again, I would have done it differently now. But it was just really kind of on a whim. It was a weekend project that I put together, and I came up with a quick logo based on a free font. And I programmed the page, and I ordered 60 shirts, which cost me $10 each. So it was $600 in a credit card that, you know, my girlfriend was like, we're trying to save for a wedding. What are you doing? Like, why are you spending $600 that I had no plan on paying back. I mean, no plan as to how I was going to pay back, even though I was selling this merchandise, because I had never started a business. I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
So from there, you just kind of decided to go all in based off of this idea. So like putting yourself in $600 arrears and stuff. Were you confident with that, or was it just kind of everything just came together so fast?
You know, I think it was a little bit, it wasn't so much confidence. I mean, the confidence I had was based on the fact that people on the forums were very supportive. And I think had I not had that, I was kind of operating in a vacuum. So this was the first public proof when I showed, it was almost like, you know, in classes we would do a portfolio review or something. This was like that, only people were like, hey, I would buy that. And I just had enough of that interest to push me over the edge to finally actually do something, as opposed to saying that was a good idea and then just move on. But I think it was, I'm just going to do this. Hopefully with the money I make, I can pay back my credit card over time and we'll see where it goes. So I wasn't thinking long term even. I mean, you dream about long term, but in terms of planning, my whole plan was I just need to pay back that $600 at some point, and hopefully I can do it with the sale of these shirts.
and from there then, so you order the t-shirts, you get the t-shirts, and then what happens from that point? So
I got the t-shirts, and I think I started, if I'm remembering correctly, I started pre-selling them. So I already had some money coming in from the initial sales to help when I got the shirts to sell them, you know, so it was a little bit of I paid for them with my credit card. I started selling them, and then I got them, started shipping them out, and I was able to start paying down the credit card. But after that, you know, I kept all the money I had a separate, you know, PayPal account, and then I had a separate personal checking account that I would just, you know, in my mind, that was my Fright Rags money. So I just put all the money there, and I wasn't looking to pay myself. I was just looking to keep it going. It was literally just more fuel to keep going. So right after my first order of shirts, in my office where I was working at the time, my boss brought in a person who was a screen printer, and because we were looking to get some screen printing done on our bags. And as the guy walked by my office, I pulled him aside. I said, hey, do you do t-shirts? He goes, oh yeah, do them all the time. I'm like, okay, can I talk to you about maybe doing some t-shirts for me? He's like, yeah, sure. So he gave me his number. Funny enough, he was literally like not even a mile away from where I worked, right around the corner. I went to his house. He had all the equipment in his garage. He just did this out of his garage. He had a full-time job, but he did this on the side too. He actually had a full-time job screen printing at another place doing not t-shirts, but other stuff. But at home, he had the setup that he could do t-shirts. And the pricing he gave me for the same stuff I was doing was so much lower. You know, I was paying $10 a shirt, and I don't remember what the original prices were that he gave me. It was probably like $6 or something. Who knows? It was enough of a savings where I was like, oh, this is great. Like, and it's local. So at that point, he became our t-shirt printer for the next 5 years. And he did all the shirts, and I would go over there after work, you know, pick up my shirts and bring them home and fold them and do all that stuff.
And so you get your initial orders and stuff, and obviously, like you said, you were kind of in a vacuum. So you see things, you know, kind of starting. At what point did you notice it started to take off? Maybe it wasn't just, you know, guys on a forum ordering some cool shirts.
It took a while. I mean, I would be on a few different forums where I would do my best to participate so that I wasn't just spamming people. You know, I'd want to be part of the community. I felt that was important. I didn't want to just jump on a different forum and spam my wares all over the place. You know, I really wanted to be part of the conversation because I'm a horror fan too, you know. So I would say, you know, I started in September of 2003, and, you know, it took a good year and a half or so. You know, I would get orders, but what would happen is I would do a new release. So I'd have 3 or 4 new designs, and I would send them out, whether it was an email to people that had ordered from me or on these forums, and I would get this nice bump in orders. for the first few days. And, you get, I don't remember, maybe 20 or 30 or 40 orders or whatever. And all of a sudden, it's sort of like it dies out. And next thing you know, you're going a week to 2 weeks without an order. And during those times, I would be like, maybe I should just stop this. My wife and I just got married. We're going to move into a new house. And, maybe I should just not do this. And all of a sudden an order would come through. And I'm like, someone just found me randomly and they ordered for me. This is amazing. And so I just remember constantly participating in forums and, figuring out things on my own, like, I should email, or I should use this software to email all the people as part of a newsletter. That's really cool. And okay, let's start doing that more often. That seems to be working. Or I could, use a blog and have people comment there. Like, it was just, it did take a long time. I mean, it was just constantly working at it and changing it up and trying new things. And in the interim, what happened was I was able to get in contact with Hot Topic, and they ordered, this was in 2005, they ordered some T-shirts from us, which was a whole other headache because you have to do all the work yourself. I mean, you have to tag them, put the size stickers on them, fold them, and there's a 60-page manual that you have to read just to fulfill these things. And companies do it all the time, but I'm working out of my house, And they even bought the What Would Jason Do design once I redesigned it because I got a cease and desist from New Line because of the hockey mask, because it was not licensed at the time. So those things came in, and that was interesting because I was making some extra money selling to Hot Topic, but that dried up within a year at the time because other designs they ordered from us were not performing well. So, but it did allow some extra income that I could invest into the company and just use for funds that, whether it was inventory or other stuff. So it was all incremental. It wasn't until 2008 that I could quit my job. And that was only because in 2007, a friend of mine was like, hey, don't you think you could quit now? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. So I found a savings account online that paid out 5% interest, which is crazy nowadays. Mm-hmm. And I decided to create the savings account. It had nothing to do with any of my personal or business accounts. And I automatically transferred money from my Fright Rags account to that business account every week. It was the same amount of money that I made at my job. And it would automatically be taken out. I wouldn't have to do a thing, and I wouldn't look at it. And I wanted to see what happened. If I could go 6 months or a few months or a year, whatever, without, quote unquote, paying myself, without worrying about inventory, other things, then I knew I could effectively pay myself. And within 6 months, I realized I could do that, and I quit my job, and I went actually to work part-time as a graphic designer for a few months before I realized I'm just too busy. But I had 6 months of income built up. So then I had 6 months of a cushion, and I could operate Fright Rags full-time to see where it went. And that was 2008, and I haven't stopped since. So,
and like, I guess to get it to that point, was that just a natural, like, you don't think there was one thing that happened? It was just kind of working at it and working through maybe those slumps or tough times?
Yeah, it was definitely just a slog, like, it's funny. I talked to some people and they're very complimentary, like you were, like, oh, Fright Rags is this, name, and it's up there with, like you were saying, these other names and stuff. And that's awesome. That's great to hear. And I love that aspect. And I love that we have so many people that want to follow us and buy our products. But, those first 5 years, I feel like, aside from, these forums or whatever, nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew what Fright Rags was. It was just me working away at something that I never really knew if it was going to be, something that was going to work. And it was very incremental. It was baby steps. And I'm glad, because I learned a lot during that period. I mean, I'm learning every day now, but I mean, during that period, these people now, the barriers are so low now. You can get into e-commerce, you can jump in and have an Instagram page and Facebook or whatever, and you can effectively grow your business pretty quickly. But for me, it was like going back to school, and it took years. But I don't know if there was any one event that I can point to and say that was it.
So this was 2008, 2009?
Yeah, when I quit my full-time job, it was 2008. Yeah.
And at this point, it was still just you?
Yeah, I didn't hire my first employee until 2008, and that was a friend of mine who came in to help fill orders. He actually, when I took a part-time job as a graphic designer, I was working about 20 hours a week, and I did that mainly because, I just had my first child, and I wasn't, you just never know. I was like literally quitting my job to do this stuff on my own. I didn't know how long it was going to last, so I took this other job just to kind of have some extra money coming in. But during the hours I was gone during the day, I needed some help filling orders, and my friend was working part-time at that point, and so I said, why don't you come over to my house and while I'm not there and just fill orders? And that's what started it, and that was for a few months, and then we moved into an office a year later, and it just kind of built up. He went from like maybe 10 hours a week to 15 to 20 and then 40. So it's just, and then I had to hire other employees, and it just kind of continued.
And okay, so then at that point, there's kind of like still basically you, and then you've got your friend helping out and stuff. So like to acquire, I guess, different licenses and stuff. How were you? Obviously, I know you can't get into the details, but like how does that look for you? Reaching out to a Halloween or a Leprechaun or whatever it might be.
Well, and very early on, like the beginning, I knew that what I was doing was unlicensed, and that, there was a risk there. There was always a risk in doing things unlicensed. And so in the beginning, even though I was still doing unlicensed things, I would reach out to people. And the first license I ever got, I think, was, if I'm not mistaken, it was like within a couple months of me starting Fright Rags, and it was for Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3, which is funny because we still have them today. The person who owned them, Michael Simpson, who was the writer-director of the films, or at least directed by, I should say, he was gracious enough to grant me a license without an advance or anything like that. It was great. And then as we went along, I would just reach out to these companies. Like Halloween, I reached out to very early on, and I had the door shut in my face repeatedly for about 8 years before we were able to finally get it. And with good reason. We weren't ready for it. It wasn't something that a lot of these licenses that require an upfront advance against royalties. So that's a lot of money you got to lay out up front. And there's a lot of factors, other factors involved that I just would never have been ready for back then. So we really started small. We worked with Trauma, and then we worked with Tops. Then we got Evil Dead 2, which was sort of like a bigger license. And once you start getting known titles and companies kind of under your belt in terms of experience and working with them, it allows you to then go to bigger companies. If you've worked with Universal, well then, Sony is going to look at that and go, oh, okay, you've got some credibility. It's hard for someone off the street to walk in and be like, I want a license for this, for this movie, for T-shirts. And they'll be like, well, who are you? If you don't have a presence, if you don't have a business to speak of, or experience, it's going to be harder.
Yeah, I get you. And with some of those, like, I don't. This sounds like I'm doing this because of the Irish thing, but like a franchise like Leprechaun, like how does something, like how do you even like when you track down or look to track down a certain license? Because I imagine a lot of these things are passed through like different estates, and it ends up in the hands of God knows who, some of those franchises. Like how do you narrow stuff like that down? Like Leprechaun, for example, not that it's because I do think it has quite a big following, but it's not really, I wouldn't necessarily call it like overly relevant right now, let's say.
Right.
But those things, like, I think there's definitely a huge market there for merchandise or T-shirts or pins or whatever it might be.
Yeah, so it does require a lot of investigative work. Like Leprechaun is actually a really good example because it's part of the Lionsgate portfolio. And I don't know, and Lionsgate acquired it. Oh gosh, I feel like I could be completely wrong, but I do remember it's funny. I remember having a conversation about Leprechaun specifically back in probably 2007, 2008. and I was talking to a company that was handling the rights, because sometimes studios handle it directly. So, for example, Universal Studios, we deal with Universal Studios directly. There's no third party involved. With some other companies, they have a third party broker, like a licensing agent that you go through for everything. And so at that point, Leprechaun was being dealt with a third party agent, I believe, on its own. And they just wanted way too much money. I should say way too much money that I could afford at that time. This was 2007. And I was like, what? Nowadays it's a little bit different. So I passed. But years later, probably 2017, we were able to get it as part of a group deal through Lionsgate, because they owned it. So it's about kind of just looking up. That's a lot of just looking up on the internet and trying to figure out, okay, who owns this? And then, that production company put it out, but that production company isn't around anymore. Well, who are they bought by? And try to look that up. And you try to follow the path. And then you go, I think Lionsgate might have it now. Let me ask, and they might say, well, we need to do our due diligence, because sometimes these studios don't even know what they have. I was just talking to a studio the other day, or a couple months ago it was, and I said, hey, what about this movie? Because we were negotiating a contract, and they said, we need our legal department to look up to see if we have the rights to this, because it was it's a bigger studio, but the title itself was a little bit more obscure, and nobody's actually licensed it out before. So they don't have like a program designed around it. And luckily we were able to get it, but it's so funny. You just assume, I assume that these studios just know everything about what they have, and it's sometimes not the case. So it's still on us to kind of do the research, which is fine,
And when you select, I assume majority of this comes from you. When you select a license or a movie or whatever, do you have a list? Is it your favorite movies? Is it based off of popularity, or how would you select?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, and we have definitely a running list of titles. I mean, we get requests all the time, so if we start seeing things bubble up, we'll start looking into it, because we know there's a demand. It's hard because there are some titles that people ask us about, but we already know that it would cost us way more money than it's worth, because when you're putting up all this money in advance and you're taking the risk of not only the advance money, but also development time and money for designs, and then inventory and all these other things, you just have to make sure it's worth it. And even though you you never really know. You never truly know. I mean, there's been some properties that I thought were going to be home runs that weren't, and vice versa. There's properties that I thought, I don't know how well this is going to do, and it's like completely destroyed any expectations because it did so well. So there's always a risk, but there are definitely some titles where it's like, okay, if I can get that for this amount, it'll be worth it. But if I have to spend this much more money, I just not worth the risk for me, But in terms of ones we go after, again, it's this list of movies we have. And the great thing is sometimes with companies, you can get a bulk deal. So you get more than one title for a certain price, and you can kind of, if they have more films that might not be a good on their own, we can lump them into a group deal so that we can at least still create products for them, but it's not contingent on one specific advance. That advance kind of is covering all the other properties. So the really popular properties might make up for the ones that we know won't do as good, but we want to do them anyway because we know there's some demand there for them.
Yeah, and I guess, does it work, or has it ever worked the other way? Like, have you had, I would imagine you probably have had people reach out to you looking to have T-shirts made or designs done for movies or for...
Yeah, we've had that happen a few times, actually. We've had, studios reach out to us. And luckily, we've got really great relationships with all the studios we work with. And there are times when then there are new movies coming out, and we'll get a call or an email and like, hey, we've got this movie coming out. And usually we already know about it because we're fans. and they'll be like, hey, or sometimes it's like, we're doing this, would you want to get in on it, in terms of doing a shirt for it? I'm like, yeah, sure. And even then, sometimes, again, new movies are a risk. If it's a new property, if it's something based on, like, for example, the new Halloween movie, we knew there was a built-in audience for that. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis coming back, things like that. We just, we wanted to be a part of that, and we were, luckily, and we're going to be a part of the next two films. But with a brand new property, sometimes it's like, I don't know. It's a very big risk because, again, if people haven't seen it yet, are they going to buy a T-shirt on it? Halloween 2018 is a new movie, but it's based on a character and a story that's been around for 40 years. So there's already a baked-in demand. But for something that's brand new, I think it takes a little bit. But you know what? That surprised me in the past too. We've released some things for newer films where I'm like, oh, that actually did better than I expected. So again, one of those risks that you got to just look at and go, is this worth it right now or not?
Yeah, I feel that because I mean, I love the Halloween collection and stuff like that. House of a Thousand Corpses, those kind of maybe more established names, but even when I seen the Houses October Built, I love that movie. I love those types of movies, and to be able to see, even if it's one T-shirt or it's a hoodie and a T-shirt and some socks or whatever, it's so cool to be able to see those things being brought out.
Yeah, and we like doing that. We like being able to offer smaller films or just films that don't see this crazy wide distribution or have been around for years and years and years. It's fun to be able to work with those properties because like you said, there are people out there that do want them. There might not be as many that want that versus some other, like Friday the 13th or something, but there's still people that want them, and it's nice to be able to do it when it makes sense for us. Yeah.
What would you say your Grail T-shirt is that you've already done or design that is your favorite personally?
Oh, that is a hard one because we've done, I think today,
so many.
I think over 800 T-shirt designs by this point. Probably more at this point. Probably more closer to 1,000. But having a favorite is like picking a favorite child. But if I had to pick one right off the top of my head at this moment, there's two that we've done for Halloween. The first one, artist by the name of Justin Osborne did this 4 years ago. It wasn't the first one he's ever done from us, and it wasn't even the last, but it just had Michael kind of looming overhead with his knife and Jamie at the bottom of the stairs, or Lori, I should say, kind of looking out. And I just thought it was simple, but it captured the feel of the film really well. But I also, when I go to throw on a shirt, I tend to gravitate toward things that are one or two colors and pretty simple. I wear all the other stuff too, but those just kind of catch my eye. And the one that I've been wearing a lot more lately is we do these TV ad looking designs where it looks like an ad that was out of a TV guide or newspaper, and it promotes the movie that's going to be on TV. And when we started these, we did Halloween 1, and we had it premiering on that Friday night at 7, almost like it was when I saw it as a kid. The only difference was that was an NBC presentation, and we changed it to WUHF Channel 31, which is the channel I grew up watching all my horror movies on most of the time because they had a special theirs was Wednesday nights was horror movies, but it was just, it's an old logo. And when I look at it, obviously it goes back to the first time I ever saw Halloween and the 31 logo. And it speaks to me. So I toss that on pretty often.
And is there a property that's maybe gotten away from you or has yet to come, or something you would like to do?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for us, we've been trying to work with Warner Brothers for many years now, and they own Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and The Shining and Lost Boys and Gremlins. I mean, there's a ton. And, years ago, we would do these limited edition shirts for 3 days, and we'd throw them up, and we'd done Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, and they were just limited edition because we didn't have a license, and we thought, we'll just sell it for the weekend and get out. But as we started accruing more licenses, it just felt unfair to do that. And so several years ago, I personally just made the decision, let's just not do that anymore. We've got other licensed stuff. Let's just not do any of those things until we get the license for them. And we've been trying. I mean, believe me, you know, people ask us every day, what about Friday the 13th? What about Nightmare on Elm Street? What about this? What about that? And, you know, there are other companies that do it, whether it's licensed or unlicensed. I see it too. But for whatever reason, Warner Brothers just has not been allowing new licensees into their properties. And it's been a struggle. But I'm trying to hold fast to that because I feel like it would be a great opportunity once we do get the license to really, it would just be so much fun. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but really anything in Warner Brothers catalog has been sort of a grail item, even though we, like I said, have done them in the past and have done some amazing designs for them in the past, but they were all unlicensed. And I just I don't want to do that anymore. You know, it's been, I don't remember the last time we did one. It's been several years now at this point, but I would love to be able to re-release them as licensed products and create new ones. I think we could do some amazing stuff, but just got to wait until they finally say yes.
Yeah. Let's say, for example, you get a call from Warner Brothers tomorrow and they want you to do it. What happens from there? Like, do you have designers and artists on your team? Do you reach out to people? How does that work?
We have a few different people, or it works a few different ways. So basically, if Warner Brothers called us tomorrow and we negotiate a deal and signed it, what we would do is we have a staff artist, a designer, our head designer Joe, who he kind of oversees like the newsletters and the website and the social media and other things, and he does design too. He's designed a lot of stuff for us, but we also have a couple people that are exclusive to us, Justin Osborne, who I mentioned before, and Kyle Crawford, who has been a friend of mine for years. They're sort of our go-to guys for any properties that we get. They're going to be doing something for it. So we put them on the schedule. Okay, you got this to do. We got this to do. We need it by this date. You know, we try to plan ahead. And then we'll sit down, and when I say we, it's usually Chris, who is our production manager, and even everybody here at the office, or I'll talk to people, you know, in the warehouse or here in the office, and we'll talk, like, oh, we just got Creepshow, what should we do? But we usually have ideas where if we decide to go and make like a fake pulp novel cover, well, we know an artist that can do that, and he's ready to go. If we want to do an enamel pin, we know there's a woman who's just an amazing artist that we go to her for these pins because we want her style. If we know we want something else in a certain style, like a comic book style, there's another artist we can go to. So we have a sort of they're not exclusive to us, they're contract, but we have like this stable of people that we use for these ideas that we've already generated product for in other licenses, but we can do it for these new ones. And then we always get people coming to us with ideas or art that they have. And so if we find a designer that like, ooh, that's a really cool style, we should do that for this property. Let's do it. And a lot of times it's for properties we've already made our first collection or two collections, and we've still got the license. We might look into some other options. Like we haven't done this for this property. Let's reach out to that designer, you know? And either we give them the idea, or there's many times where like Justin Osborne, I'll say, hey, Halloween, what do you got? What do you think? Because I like when the designers, like I've given people ideas and I've drawn them out for them to just essentially copy in their style. But I love when I just let a designer go with it. You know, we give them the limitations, what they can and can't do, and I want to see what they come up with. You know, I like other people's visions. You know, I'd like to see it. You know, I like a variety. So it works in a lot of different ways.
And is there designs or T-shirts that you've personally designed yourself, or like is that something that you do?
Yeah, there's a few here and there. It's kind of funny. I mean, I haven't designed for us regularly in many, many, many years. But over the last few years, there's actually been a few that have popped up. There's one that we did, and I hesitate to say that I designed it because I didn't do much with it, but like, for example, there was a t-shirt we did, I think it was last year, and we had the license for The Fly. So obviously Jeff Goldblum is one of those guys that sort of everybody knows, even if they don't know every movie he's been in. They might not associate him with The Fly or even Jurassic Park, but they know Jeff Goldblum. He's just a popular person. So we had limitations on being able to use him on our t-shirts. And that happens a lot with licenses. So we had to do a lot of our designs without using his face. But we did have images they gave us that we could use called assets. And these are approved already by the studio. So we don't have to we have to get additional approval on what we're going to do with them. But these images have been cleared with actors' likenesses. And there's this one where he's kind of crouched down coming out of the telepod, and he's naked, and he kind of has that Jeff Goldblum look on his face. His eyes are looking one way. And I was messing around right here on my computer, and I cut out his head. And basically, when I was a kid, I had this T-shirt. I don't know how familiar you are with Gilligan's Island, the TV show, but
yeah.
I had a T-shirt. It was white, and it had a blown up black and white Gilligan head on it, and it was all half toned. And it was just silly. And again, going back to my weird sense of style or humor, I just loved it. It was just a big old goofy Gilligan head on a shirt. So I did the same thing with Jeff Goldblum. I cut his head out of the shirt, blew it up, put it on a black shirt though, and kind of half toned it. And I just sat here laughing. I thought, this is so ridiculous, but I wonder if we'd be able to do this because we're using the image as is. We're just using his head, and they approved it. And it sold like crazy because I think, again, it is The Fly, but it's still just a Jeff Goldblum shirt. So that was kind of fun. I mean, and it's been limited to things like that for the most part.
Is that the shirt where he's like looking off to the side?
Yeah.
I actually have that shirt.
Oh, do you really? That's awesome. That was an image we were allowed to use. All I did was cut it out and make it black and white and add that little halftone pattern to it because I thought that would be interesting. Mm-hmm. But to say I actually quote unquote designed it is a little bit of a stretch. I didn't do any drawing or do any like whatever. So I just kind of repurposed something.
You'd be surprised how much compliments that shirt gets. I wore that to Halloween Horror Nights in Universal Orlando like 2 years ago, and like for the entire day, like I would say between 50 and 100 people pointed that shirt out. I know they mightn't necessarily know, but obviously they see his face. Not everybody got the fly part, but it was like, oh hey. And I think you're right in saying that. Like it's just like it's one of those things. It's cool. It's not necessarily the Fly, but everybody knows him, and he's like such a household name. Yeah,
and that's kind of what I was hoping for. I was hoping it would be that type of reception, and it was. I mean, and it sold really well for a little while, and again, sometimes those things work and sometimes they just don't. So luckily that one did.
When things started to get more full-time or more professional, whatever you want to call it, like the style of some of the T-shirts and the designs, but is that something you try and keep like a baseline on? Because I not to say that the shirts look the same, but I find that in every drop or every collection, there's always that one like kind of cool, I guess it kind of reminds me of like something like like a Scream Factory artwork. It has that like kind of iconic, okay, this is like the reimagined poster, the reimagined artwork.
Yeah.
Is that something like, do you guys always kind of, is that like a requirement maybe in a way that you've always got maybe one of those?
I mean, a requirement only in the sense that, Justin Osborne, who's, I would argue is probably our flagship artist, and that's who you're referencing with that. He just has a great style and aesthetic that matches what I feel is, it's a very subjective thing. So when I'm talking this way, I'm talking because it's how I personally feel, and I understand that not everybody loves that look, but to me, I love the idea of having like a vintage looking thing where his artwork looks like it could have been on the VHS box. Mm-hmm. He also changes it up. He doesn't do the same thing every time, but you can always tell it's him. So I just have been enjoyed working with him for so many years that he is synonymous with what we do. Mm-hmm. And I feel like he is really, he definitely is one of the major kind of aesthetic. He adds that aesthetic to us. That is what I love, And then in terms of the others, like Kyle and things, like, things have evolved over the years, and we've also seen what does well and what doesn't do well. There's been a few artists that personally I love, and I love their work, and I look at it and go, oh my God, this is gorgeous. And it doesn't sell on a t-shirt. Mm-hmm. And you try to figure it out. And if it starts, it's hard to do just for one collection, but like if you start looking at collection after collection, seeing what is selling more than others, you start getting a feel for what people want. And it isn't to say that we only want to cater to what people want in the sense that we won't do anything else or try to take risks, but we always start with the idea first. But if we know that, well, this artist produces work that people like, well, then we're going to keep using that person. It just makes sense. But that said, if we have an idea that we're thinking, oh, we've never done this before, let's try it, we will still do that, because I'm always up for trying new things. If we didn't try new things, we'd totally be stuck in a rut. But we try to be mindful of what we've done before, what we can do, in the future. But it's hard now, especially as we've been doing these properties for years and years. It's not necessarily hard to think up new ideas, even though that can be a challenge. But we also have such a backlog of designs that people still want. Our Halloween release this year for just part 1 was all reprints except for one new design. Now, that one new design, that Boogeyman Club, sold amazingly well. But all of those reprints sold amazingly well. And those were shirts we've done for years at this point. So there's still a demand for the stuff that isn't around all the time, because it's still kind of seasonal, which is great, but it's hard to sometimes figure out which ones to do. We can't release 30 shirts each collection. It's crazy,
Yeah.
So it's trying to pick and choose,
Yeah, like I think it was probably this time last year when you done the Halloween 4 or 5 and the Curse of Michael Myers for, was it Month of Myers or Myers Month or something like that? Yeah, like I think there was like 9-10 shirts. I think I bought all 9.
Awesome.
And it was just one of those things, because you've got, like we just spoke about, the kind of old maybe VHS style artwork, but then you could kind of see there was like, I have some friends who are maybe not huge horror fans and stuff, and they're like, why'd you buy the same shirt like 10 times? And I was like, no. They're like, yeah, but it's all Michael Myers. It's all just his face, whatever. I was like, no, you don't get it. When you get it, you get it.
Right. Exactly.
So from there, then I think you kind of alluded to it earlier with the name. You guys have like branched out from just t-shirts and hoodies and stuff into socks, lounge pants, pins, even into like figures and stuff. Was that always the intention as things started to grow, or like where did that initially come from?
I wouldn't necessarily say it was the intention, but as we started to grow, when you started, again, we're fans and we're collectors, so the ideas always start with just this thought. Like, for example, I was at a licensing show, which is held every year in Las Vegas. And it's you go and you can meet with studios and people. You have to set up your appointments in advance, and you go talk with them and talk about new deals or whatever. And I just remember walking by a booth, because in one of the areas they had some manufacturers with small booths with what they make. And a lot of these, there was a whole area of Chinese factories for different products. And I remember walking by one that made socks, and I was like, oh man, that would be really cool to have socks that look like this. And you start thinking, like, oh, let's try it out. And then it just snowballs into one thing. And at the time, enamel pins were pretty big. Other companies were doing it, so we decided to jump in on it. Lounge pants was because I had this pair of lounge pants my wife bought me that were just the most comfortable things ever. And, I had other branded lounge pants, not horror ones, but that were not as comfy. And I thought, if I could make these, but with like Halloween on them, people, when they come home from work, all they want to do is get into comfy clothes. Why can't they get into some comfy horror clothes? And so I sent those pants that I bought a new pair, but I sent them to a factory and they were able to replicate it. So it's these ideas come about. It's like trading cards. Like I loved trading cards as a kid. I was not into sports trading cards, but I liked anything non-sports trading card wise. But there was only, there's E.T. and Jaws 2, I think, and some other random ones, the Fright Flicks cards. But what if we had Evil Dead cards? What if we had Halloween cards? I would have loved that. And what if we could do it to look like the old style cards with the chipboard back and the wax paper and all those things? So it's just ended up, honestly, it's sort of just coming out of our collective heads, like, oh my God, what if we had an activity book, but it was Silent Night, Deadly Night instead of a really like wholesome Christmas thing. And it was about this slasher film. Like, it's just these things that are born out of these conversations. And when we do hit on something like that and we all go like, oh, that would be amazing, then we kind of know that that's sort of like, we should look into that.
Yeah. So you think some of it comes from like obviously being a fan and a collector as well?
Oh, totally. I mean, we're seeing stuff out there. There's a lot of times I'll see things out there, like a hat, and it could be a hat for a sports team or whatever. Like, for example, we did we've done this varsity hoodie thing for Haddonfield varsity hoodie, and it's got the H on there, and it's a letter or whatever. And we started getting more into hats, and it was so funny. In January, I was at Disney in Orlando, and I was sitting by the pool, and a kid walked by me, and he had this really cool, I think it was a college football hat. I don't remember what it was. All I know is I'm like, oh my God. And I totally like whipped out my phone and just like slyly like zoomed in on his head and took a picture, only because I wanted a picture of that hat. And I sent it to our guy who designs our hats for us. And I was like, dude, what about this, but with the H from our jacket and this, and we can make it wool and vintage looking. He's like, yeah, that would be awesome. And then we did that Haddonfield hat, It's just, I'm always looking at things and sort of filtering them through the lens of Fright Rags and what we can do with it.
Yeah. And obviously, again, I seem to keep asking them the questions that you probably can't answer specifically, but there's obviously plans to expand on that kind of thing. Is there anything you would like to get into or you would like to try that, like, obviously you've got the lunchbox and thermos at the minute on pre-order. I imagine there's probably plans to expand into more kind of unique items like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just renegotiated one of our bigger contracts, and we've added several new categories that we haven't even started, selling yet for other things. These are new categories that we're entering into. So, in terms of anything right now at the moment that we have not done that I would love to do and isn't already in the works, there's not much there. And I say that only not because of lack of want or interest. I'm sure if I sat here for a few minutes, there's a bunch of stuff I could rattle off that I'd love to do. Mm-hmm. But it comes more from a practical standpoint. For example, our hat designer and I were talking about some items the other day, and he brought something else up. And I said, that would be amazing. But I'm already trying to figure out how we're making lunch boxes, these nanoforce, these other figures work, in addition with a handful of other categories we just added to a license, in addition to all the other stuff we normally do. And we're finding that this year it's incredibly taxing because we are a small crew. And, when you sell like those nanoforce, those were limited to 2,500 boxes and they sold out in 10 minutes. That's still 2,500 boxes that we have to receive and then ship out to customers, in addition to all the stuff that we're doing. That's a lot. That's a lot of work. And, we're not Amazon. We don't have, 800,000 employees and robotic things picking our stuff for us. Like, we're just people trying to pack and ship orders to individual people. So to me, it's more of a logistical thing to figure out. So that's been where my head's been at lately, because we have to figure it out. And, hopefully as we add bandwidth and capacity to handle those things, more ideas will come up, but we've definitely got our hands full for the next couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, and it like, again, that's another one of those things I feel like you're kind of breaking the ground there with a lot of that stuff. With the lunchbox and just all the little extras, like you said, like the lounge pants. Like I can imagine that when you guys when you had that idea that when you put that out there and people saw it, it was that same kind of thing where people were like, that was the thing I didn't know I needed that I've always been looking for.
Exactly. That's the point. That's kind of like what we like to do. But it's funny because these ideas that start that way, and I have to say it, I mean, it's genuinely, that's how those things start. It's very pure of just a pure fan standpoint. It's funny how they tend to then snowball because you start making them for every property. And when you have over 60 licenses, even if we don't do lounge pants for every single one of them, if we're doing them for even half of them, that's a lot of product and a lot of inventory and a lot of space and a lot of orders to fill. And in addition to, we have to release shirts. Oh, and by the way, we're doing hats. Oh, yeah, we should do lunch boxes too. Like, woof, it's a lot,
mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm. And okay, so like how do you feel like the future looks for you and for Fright Rags, or what's the vision for the future?
Well, it's interesting. I sometimes get asked, like, people like, oh, what's your 5-year plan or your 10-year plan or whatever it is. And I probably should have a more concrete one. But what I would say is that my whole goal for this business has always been to keep doing what we're doing. I don't have any dreams of being a certain size or of having a certain number of employees or selling off the business or whatever. My dream, and I'm living what I love to do, and mm-hmm. I'm living that, and to be able to do that and to support other people, who work with me, that is a dream come true. And, I don't look to just, we got to be X amount of dollars every year, blah, blah, blah. We need to make money and we have to be profitable. I mean, that's obviously running a business. And of course, I always want to beat what we did last year because it's like a competition with ourselves, But at the same time, the goal isn't just monetary. It's to keep just finding new and interesting things to do to keep us and fans interested and excited. If we can keep exciting people, that's all I want to do. And, we're used to, a 10 to 15, maybe even 20% growth year over year, which we've been experiencing the last several years. And that's a nice, steady growth that we can start putting other processes in place to sort of deal with how much bigger we're getting. This year has been quite an anomaly, and we're looking at right now it's 60% growth, and
crazy.
It's a great thing. And people, when I say that, people are like, congratulations, that's amazing, you must feel great. And I'm like, honestly, it creates a lot of stress amongst us because it really pushes us to the limit. Now, I have to say, I'm very, and this is a testament to my team more than anything, is that we've been able to handle that kind of growth. And we've only just recently added another person to the mix to help pick and pack orders. And he's working part-time. So really, with the team that we have, which including myself is now 8 people, but before he came along was 7, they've been able to manage this growth. But again, it's been a headache. I wouldn't want to continue on this path because it would lead to burnout. But and it's caused us to try to come up with new processes and other things to try to. It's just given us more problems to figure out. But it's again, they're good problems to have, and I feel incredibly grateful and blessed that not only did we grow during a pandemic, but we thrived. We didn't just survive; we thrived. So, but again, when you're used to 10 to maybe 20% of something, and then you're given 60%, it's like, whoa, like, if you haven't added another 30% onto your, workforce or whatever, and you're handling 30% more, or, and I mean 30% on top of any 20% we would grow, or 40% actually, that would be crazy. It's like you start looking at the real numbers and go, oh my God, every day is Black Friday. It's crazy. So, our team is definitely due for a nice long holiday break coming up in December, and because we'll shut down for Christmas and New Year's, and like we do every year. And I don't know what next year is going to bring, but if it's going to continue this way, if it's going to, level off or what, I have no idea. But all I know is that we've got a lot of great stuff planned for the next couple of years, and I'm more about making sure we've got a plan for those things. And I'm very happy and I feel lucky that I've got the next 2 years to kind of sink my teeth into. Yeah, I kind of have some ideas for past that, but there's no grand vision of, I want to be a, $50 million company and sell off one day or do blah, blah, blah. That's not, it doesn't really go that detailed.
Support First Class Horror on Patreon for as little as $1. Can't get enough of the horror? Carve yourself a deal from official merchandise, only on Teespring. Join us on all social media at First Class Horror. We have such sights to show you.
I think as well what you're saying there about the growth and how much you've thrived is kind of a testament to you and the team and everybody involved, because like those products at the end of the day are kind of like a luxury product, and to see that explode in the world we live in right now is like, I think, a testament to how good of a product and how it's all put across.
I appreciate that. I mean, that's, it's interesting. It's hard to know. I also think the climate of which horror in general tends to thrive is also, I remember someone telling me that the haunt industry, like the haunts you would go to around, September, October, that industry had its best year in 2001, right after 9/11. And I think when there's unrest in the world, obviously there's political unrest, especially in the States. There's also a global pandemic. When there are real world fears and anxieties, people need an escape. And there are so many people that escape into horror, and us fans will escape even deeper into it because it's a way to exercise those fears and anxieties. It's a way to do it safely. It's a roller coaster ride, and we can express certain things by watching these films. And I think that is it maybe deepens our love and desire for those, and then kind of mixed in with a little bit of that retail therapy type of thing where it's like, I need to just let off the steam. I see something, I just want to get it. I want to have a little gift sent to me, in the mail. I just need those little moments of happiness. I mean, I'm the same way. I mean, I've bought 2 guitars during this pandemic, and want more because I've been playing guitar for a long time, and I saw some things I really liked and I bought them, and it's brought me little bits of joy. I mean, it's not gonna cure the world or anything like that, but those moments of joy are legitimate,
Yeah, I definitely do agree with that. And I think that's why I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there with why it probably thrives. And I had actually heard that before about the haunt industry. I've been back and forth to Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando for maybe 7-8 years, and spoken to a couple of different people. I think a guy maybe you might know, Mike Aiello.
Oh yeah. I love him. He's a great guy.
Yeah, and like there's just one conversation, the topic of 2001 had come up, and I think a lot of people wouldn't think that would be a thing, but I do definitely think that there's some parallels there, and it definitely, it shows. I mean, it shows. Now, I don't want to say that the only reason that, let's say, yourself or Fright Rags or whatever company might be, is doing well is because of that, because I do definitely think that a lot of it is a testament to the work and the effort that's put in, and it can really be felt, I think. Because I think I had heard you speak before about but those kind of generic, get the poster and just stick it on a t-shirt. When you get a Fright Rags t-shirt or whatever it might be, even the lounge pants, it really feels like you can feel the nostalgia.
Yeah.
it's bizarre. I think it's hard to explain for somebody maybe who's obviously not a huge fan, but like to open up those shirts and look at the artwork and stuff. I think everybody can maybe go back to a time when they were first in the video store and saw the artwork, or it'll remind you of a memory or something like that. And I feel like that a lot of what you guys do definitely does that. It seems like more than just a t-shirt or more than just a pack of trading cards or whatever.
No, I appreciate that. And that's exactly what we go for. I mean, I remember thinking and even saying to our team years ago and saying, we're not selling t-shirts, we're selling memories. I mean, this isn't, and even now it's not even just t-shirts, but the idea is that we're selling those connections that you had, to these memories as a kid. Again, like that's one of the reasons why one of my favorite shirts is that Halloween TV design. Even though it's a very simple design, it's an image that, everyone's seen many a times, but just having it worked around this idea of an ad, it takes me back to my childhood. So anytime we can do that, I mean, even, we've definitely even ourselves have put the poster on t-shirts even more recently, because honestly, people like it. And which is funny to me because it's something I didn't think we'd ever do, because we, like you said, we want to do our original things too, which we will always do. But we do see opportunities to do just the poster on a shirt. But even then, when we do that, we make it look a little vintage. We make it look like something that may have been worn and around for a while. And even though that's not everybody's cup of tea, if you will, I that's something where I'm like, well, if we're going to put the poster art on the shirt, let's dirty it up a little bit. Let's do something
100%.
Where I had it since the movie came out,
I was just looking through Instagram and I'd seen, and I don't know how I actually missed this, but you guys are doing Halloween Resurrection and H2O merch. How did that? The only reason I'm asking this, it's for me personally. I get a lot of stick for this, but I actually really like Halloween Resurrection. I really like the opening scene. The rest of the movie is whatever, and I absolutely love Halloween H2O. I understand a lot of the stuff with the timelines, and a lot of people don't like it for various reasons. But that's one of those things like, if I've had a bad day at work or if something's going on, like you said before, I use things like that as an escape, and I feel like it brings me back to a certain point. And every time I put it on, whether it's been the first time or the 100th time, I can kind of feel that feeling I felt. How did or what brought that about? Or like, I wouldn't have thought Halloween Resurrection would have been really.
So I mean, I'll be honest with you. Halloween Resurrection is definitely the least favorite of mine. So the way the Halloween franchise works, just as a real quick overview, so you can get an idea, is part 1 and 4 and 5. So those 3 are owned by one company. Okay, are controlled by one company. 2 and 3 are controlled by another company, and then 6 through 6, 7, or 6 H2O Resurrection. And even the newer films are controlled by another company, and the Rob Zombies 2 are another company. So it's even though it's the Halloween franchise, these are splintered up among different companies. And we're lucky we have relationships with all of them. We do all the films. So in terms of Resurrection, we had originally only had from this other company, Miramax. We'd only had Halloween, Curse of Michael Myers, the part 6, and the 2018 film. That was originally on our license, and then when that came up to be time to renew, we were already in negotiations with Halloween Kills and Ends because those had been announced. But we said, all right, well, why don't we grab H2O and Resurrection as part of this deal? Because I know there are at least a handful of fans out there for Resurrection, so we should do something for it. Because at this point, we had done literally every Halloween film. Like, you might as well just toss in Resurrection. And in honest, we had not done H2O yet, and that was one that I was, early on, I was hesitant at first, and I thought, you know what, we should definitely do that as we started doing the others, and this was several years ago. So when it came time again to renew, we were like, oh yeah, throw H2O in there if we can. And again, this might be the only collection we ever do for Resurrection, but we have a couple ideas that are, we've already posted one. There's another one, which is pretty funny. we're not going crazy with it. Even H2O, we've got a few ideas. We will probably do a few more for that. A lot of these other ones, if Resurrection ever came back, it would just be a reprint. It's not anything we're investing a ton of energy into, but we wanted to represent it somehow. So
I assume I don't know if you can give it away, but the photo that was posted on Instagram, is that one of the designs? Or
yeah, so that's one of the designs.
I like that.
And same with H2O, that we posted a teaser of that one too, so that one will be out. They're all coming out on the 28th for 6 H2O Resurrection and reprints. Well, I actually have a new design for 2018 as well. We had to move some things around a bit. We were waiting for approvals, and a lot of our schedule was based on Halloween Kills coming out, even though they moved that a while ago. So we just, we try to plan as far in advance as we can, but there are some things out of our control, and waiting for approvals is one of them. And so when things go past a certain time frame that you're used to, you have to start shuffling things around, because sometimes these things come down to the last minute, even though we don't try to make it work that way. If something like Halloween, we can't move into November, we can't move into December. Like, we kind of have to put it out this time of year. So there, we want to make sure we hit that. So yeah, it's a lot of factors, but I'm looking forward to that release. I think it'll be fun.
Me too. I have a huge smile on my face right now just because of this. Is that a big collection? This is just me now, just asking, just greedy.
We've got one new shirt for part 6. We've got, what did we decide? I can probably tell you in a second here. We've got, I think, 2 or 3 for H2O. I'm actually just looking it up real quick. And then we've got, where are we? October. So let me see here. What do we got? Oh, yeah, we got a few. So we got 1 for 6. We've got 3 for H2O.
Oh, wow.
One of them, I will say, is the poster art that looks a little distressed. But then there's the one that you saw on Instagram. And then there's another one that's actually I kind of dig a lot. I haven't announced this yet, but I'll tell you. We've got an H2O hat coming out.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And then we've got, believe it or not, we've got 1, 2, 3 designs for Resurrection. And then we've got 2 for Halloween 2018, the reprint of our main one with Lori on it. And then we've got a brand new one. It's quite a few coming out.
So it's going to be an expensive week.
Yeah. It's fun, and I'll tell you this too. Actually, one of the ones. So you saw the Resurrection one we did. We've got one with just the Dangertainment logo on it because we thought
nice.
It was really cool. Yeah, and then we've got one with everybody's favorite quote on it that we're doing as well.
Let everybody figure out.
Yeah, exactly.
That was something just on the topic of, like, obviously me kind of fanboying out there. Do you keep, like, your own copy of every shirt, or is that like something?
Yeah,
you have like a vault full of shirts.
Yeah, I do actually. So it's funny you say that. So I have a basement under my house, but then we have the house we moved into a few years ago has an addition added on to it, and the former owners and the builders were very smart. When they added that addition, they actually added a crawl space underneath that as an additional basement area. So it's not as tall as a normal basement, but it's like, I don't know, 3 to 4 feet high, and it's insulated and well lit. So it's not some creepy dank, space. It's like usable storage space. And it's about 500 to 600 square feet of space. And we've got a lot of our stuff in there. I mean, stuff that my wife and I and kids have accrued over the years, but I've got I've guesstimated around 900 t-shirts in that storage area.
Wow.
In bins. So basically I have t-shirts from the very first release I ever did. I have pretty much one of everything we've ever did. There's definitely a few years in the middle there that I definitely have the files for them, but I don't know if I actually have the t-shirts. But about 7-8 years ago, we started taking one shirt of every release and putting it away as an archive. And we could, in theory, chop that all down and cut them up and just have like a book of them, like just on the fabric. Because sometimes it's good to go back to what we did before and make sure we can match it. But also it's sort of just like a time capsule or an archive, just to have. And selfishly, I do keep the one size we keep as a medium because that's what I wear. So if in any event I ever wanted to go back into one of those old bins and grab a shirt that I just don't have in my own closet, I can grab it and wear it. But it's also because the design, I think, looks good on a medium or a large because of the way the t-shirt size is, it's larger on that type of size. And it takes up a little less room than, say, like an XL or something, So there's some practicality to it, but largely it's because I'm a medium, and if I ever want to wear a shirt, I can grab one. Because I don't take everything for myself. It's funny, weirdly enough, my closet is actually more all black shirts than it has anything else. And they're all varying brands, and some of them are a little different. Some of them are like maybe marbled or distressed, or some of them are really dark black or gray. And it's weird. Like, I love our stuff so much, and I'll walk through the warehouse sometimes and look at it on the shirt. Cause I see things on the screen every day, but when I see it in person, it's like, oh my God,
yeah.
I love it. But if I took everything I ever wanted, I would have yet another 800 shirts in my closet. I don't have that kind of room. So I generally rotate them, and I always just kind of grab like a handful of I definitely have several in my closet of our own t-shirts and a few from other brands that I like, but I just don't want to think a lot. Like I feel like I make a lot of decisions during the day. And it's funny because I've heard that about, I think Steve Jobs did that, and I think Barack Obama did that. Like, they always wore the same thing every day because they didn't want to make another decision. And it's weird. I don't do that because of it,
but yeah,
because of them. But it's honestly the similar thought process I've had going, I just don't want to think about it. I just want to throw this on and, it's just going to give me my black shirt and I'm gone.
Yeah. The staple of the super successful.
Yeah, I guess, or just the mentally fried, whatever. in my way.
I think it was last year. I think you had posted you were on the set for. I'm not sure if it was Halloween Kills or Halloween Ends. I don't know if they filmed those back to back.
Yeah, it was Halloween Kills. Halloween Ends was supposed to film this year, but obviously COVID.
Yeah. So how was that whole experience?
It was incredible. It all happened. It was very whirlwind. There was a potential for me to be able to go, but it wasn't guaranteed. And listen, I don't expect anything from anybody. And just the fact that it was even a potential opportunity to me already made my day or my year, because I would have never even expected that much. So, I was talking back and forth with the studio who I'm friends with, and we were just discussing it at one point, and they were looking into it, and I said, whatever, I'm not, no pressure, whatever. So I was just waiting basically. And when I got the call about going and when I could go and all this stuff, it was so whirlwind. It happened on a Friday night, and I was out in North Carolina, I think, on Monday. So I had to get all my arrangements and stuff. And it was surreal. I knew, a couple of the producers I was already friends with and stuff. And, it was pretty much like, you're going to come in, you have to be with a certain person. You have to do the, basically, not in a mean way, but just, you can't get in the way, just sit there basically. I'm like, yeah, no problem. I don't want to get in anybody's way. But when I got there, it was so, how do I put this? I just didn't want to get in anybody's way. I didn't even want to use the bathroom or something. I was just like, don't even know that I'm here, but shortly, within an hour or less, everyone was so welcoming and gracious. And it felt like, it was just kind of, part of the group. And I ended up staying there all night, from 7 at night to I think 7 in the morning, and the night after. I was there for 2 nights of shooting. I was there. I actually could have stayed all night if I wanted to, but I actually tapped out earlier because I had a flight to catch in the morning, and it was getting cold, and I just was like, I should probably get some sleep because I didn't sleep much the night before. but just being there, I stayed. I knew I knew about where they were going to be filming those 2 days, but I didn't know exactly where. And so I chose a hotel in downtown Wilmington as opposed to closer to where the beach is, where most of everybody else was staying. And when I got to my hotel, I looked across the street and there was the set, like directly across the street was the set. And I knew that because I saw the cranes and I saw Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. And I was like, oh my God, that's insane. And I saw the vans and I saw and the police cars and everything all decked out in Haddonfield, stuff. So just being there, I got to, just sitting there talking to like Andy Matichak. She's sitting there, we're talking, and Kyle Richards, who played Lindsay Wallace in the first one, was right behind me, and we were chatting a little bit. Nancy Stevens was there, and Charles Cyphers, and then Anthony Michael Hall was playing Tommy. I got to talk to him for a little bit, and then I got to talk to Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, she was just hanging out, and it was the first night back on the set as Laurie Strode, and she was all decked out in hair and makeup, and I saw her. And I was like, oh, crap. Like, she was like on the other side of the group where I was a part of. And I was like, oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God. And like 2 minutes later, she appeared next to me, like right next to me. And she started talking to one of the producers. And I was in the middle. And she was kind of looping me into the conversation. There was no formal introduction or whatever. We were just talking about Knives Out because that hadn't been out yet.
Yeah.
And we're just talking, and it was like, okay. And it was like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes of that. And then she's like, oh, I'm going to go talk to those fans across the street. And she like roamed across the street to go talk to people that were like trying to take photos and stuff. It was, and I got to see her act. I got to see her in scenes and watch it from the Video Village, and they're like, oh, you need a seat. And they pulled out James Jude Courtney's seat because he wasn't on set that night. So I got to sit in the Shapes chair that night.
Wow.
And then the next night I got on set and David Gordon Green was already wearing our Halloween nylon jacket. He was wearing it during filming.
I think I remember seeing that photo.
Yeah, there was a photo I took with him, and even then I was like, do you mind if I take a picture of you? He's like, no problem. Like, I didn't want to be like stalkery, you know what I mean? Like, I got a photo, But he was totally cool. Everybody was amazing. Like, we went to Craft Services to get dinner at midnight, and it was the cast and crew all together. And again, it's not like I've been on tons of movie sets. So watching this, it really felt like there was a family unit there. People just seemed really to get along. And it just, there was no weirdness like, oh, you can't talk to Jamie Lee Curtis or you can't look at that actor or actress or whatever. Everyone was just part of the group. Like, I don't know. It's just a really cool vibe. Really cool.
Like that must have felt like in a way things had come full circle for you.
You don't even know. I mean, seriously, like I'm not gonna lie, man. I was in the airport coming home, and not to mention I was spending those 2 nights essentially in Haddonfield, but during the days I was actually in Tarker's Mills because that's where they filmed. Tarker's Mills is the fictional town in Silver Bullet, and they filmed it in Wilmington. And I adore Silver Bullet, and to be able to go to those locations and take pictures and be like on the bridge where Marty was when they shot that rocket into the werewolf's eye and things like that. It was incredibly amazing. And then at night, being around these people in a Halloween movie, I was in the airport on the way home and I was getting really emotional. Like, I was trying to write out my feelings about it because I couldn't really process what was happening. I was like, how is this happening right now? Like, that type of stuff, I'm not supposed to experience type of stuff like that. Like, that's for other people. That's not something I get to do. And I got to do it. And so I don't take any of that for granted, or I never would have expected it. So to have had that experience and those memories is like, it's just unreal.
Crazy. Yeah, I can only imagine. Just when you mentioned there about writing down how you felt about it, that was something I actually just popped into my head about 10 minutes ago. Would you ever, or had you any intentions of ever maybe writing a book? I know that might sound a little bit ridiculous to you.
It's funny you say that. We actually have something like that in the works, but it's not quite, how do I put this? It's something that we do have in the works. I can't really talk too much about it, but it's definitely along those lines, but not really from my perspective, if you will, if that makes any sense.
All right. Okay.
I mean, I've thought about it. I do keep a journal to a degree, depending on the time of, year or whatever, like just, depending on what I'm going through, I tend to write. It's not like every day is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. But, there are times where I feel like I could write some things down, but it's so funny because then I think, well, who the hell else wants to read this? Because like, it might be interesting to me. I don't know if it's interesting to anybody else,
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just me personally, but I always feel like there's, again, like a huge marker for things like that, whether it be just your story coming up. I actually talked to a guy, last week or the week before, Thomas Fenton. He was the scriptwriter for Saw 4 and I Spit on Your Grave 2 and stuff. And he had released a, not so much a story of his life, but that kind of slash, here's maybe some ideas for aspiring screenwriters and stuff like that. And I always thought that'd be an interesting idea because, like, I mean, some of the stories, like just from hearing you talk over the last hour, about, how all this came about. And I mean, I look at it and maybe other fans of horror or of Fright Rags in particular look at it and they just see this name in the gleaming lights. And it just seems like that, that's the way it always was. And just to hear you say, it was like a 5-year slog and there was times I considered, this is finished, maybe I should just stop. And then to see where it is now and like hear about you being invited to the set of Halloween Kills, and it seems like a crazy story. Like it nearly seems like a Hollywood movie.
I mean, it's funny because it does. I mean, I guess when I look at it from that perspective, I totally get that aspect of it. And I think it comes down to like, because I when I've shared stories like this in the past, where things that I've gone through in terms of learning the business and that growth. And I do think sometimes that is helpful for some people. Cause like you said, I think some people see sort of whether it's maybe not the end product, but where we're at today and not knowing what it was like before. Cause I do get people ask me for advice a lot. And I'm happy to give it. And I try to tell people, I'm like, you have to understand, like, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And you can't get caught up in the quick and immediate gratification, especially these days with the, scrolling and news feeds and all this other junk that is really just overstimulating. And people see things and they just assume that, oh, well, of course you got it to be this big because or whatever. It's like, yeah, you have no idea. So I think in some ways sharing those sort of, coming up through that thing can maybe allow people to realize that it does take a lot of just hard work. And if you just keep going at it, you can eventually make something out of it. And that's the thing. Like I sometimes think about it but I stop myself a lot because it sounds self-serving and selfish because I don't want to just seem like I'm whether it's bragging or just, you know what I mean? Like just having that, making sure it's done in the right tone, if you will, and to not come off as basically like a complete jerk.
Yeah, no, I know. And like, I 100% get, because sometimes it can be seen as bragging or a form of gloating or whatever. So I guess, like, is that you would give that advice then to maybe not necessarily someone looking to get into maybe the exact same business as you, but I find like a lot of times I talk to different people and, they've got ideas maybe in the horror universe, whether it be writing treatments for movies or, poster designs or whatever it might be. And like, I feel like they always like everybody's looking for advice or how or what should I do, or like, is that the advice you would offer? It's a marathon, not a sprint, and just kind of stick with it and keep doing what you do.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times, what separates people that are considered to be successful or, doing what they want to do for a living, and, following their dreams, if you will, and the people that aren't, is really just sticking with it and learning. Like, I don't think every idea is going to make, a career, but you have to be aware enough to know when it's not working, and if you can pivot and change it up to help it start working, but also just being in it. Like, that's one of the reasons why you have to pick something to do that you love, because, if I didn't like horror movies or t-shirts, it would be a lot harder for me to stay in this business, because, there are days it's incredibly stressful, and it's incredibly hard sometimes. There's a lot of things that are going on. There's a lot of just stress, but there's never been a day that I look at all that stress and go, I'm done. I'm out of here. I would have done that at another job. I would have been like, no, this is too much. Forget this. It's not worth it. I've never once had that inkling. So on the days that are the quote unquote worst, I'm still in it. Like, I'm not going anywhere, and the day that I start second guessing it, then I'm going to start looking for my exit, because I don't want to be in a business that I'm not interested in. It's not right for our customers, let alone myself. I don't want to phone it in, I want to keep searching on that hunt. So to anybody who's trying to start something, you got to do it because you want to do it. Don't do it because you think there's money in it. Don't do it because you think there's a career in it. Whatever. That all that stuff comes later on. You got to start it with the right intention. I always dreamt about doing Fright Rags as a full-time job, but in my mind, it was a dream and a fantasy, much like, I don't know, like, I'm just trying to think of something like having what do people dream about? Having some mansion, right? Like some 60,000 square foot, the things that people dream about. That was on that level when I first started, because it was so unattainable. I didn't even know how that would even happen, let alone how I'd get there. So I dreamed about doing it for my career, but me doing it was out of pure just, this is what I like doing, and connecting with people, and people that send their hard-earned money to me because they want something I made. Or now obviously it's a team. It's not just me, but in the beginning when it was like, oh my God, like that person saw me or my shirt and they wanted to buy it. That alone, that's all it's ever been. And that's really the seed that started it all, and it keeps going. So it's the love of it more than it is how much money can I make or whatever. Like, luckily I was able to stick with it long enough, whether it was just sheer determination or because I had nothing else better to do, who knows? But it kept growing to a point where I could just continue it as a business. But, I still have to keep it going too. So it's not like it's set it and forget it,
Yeah. And I do think you touched on something there with I think modern day social media and stuff. It promotes look at this guy is doing this thing, so let me do that. And maybe not necessarily doing it out of, I guess maybe like that dream of like, oh, I want to win the lottery, or I want to be a millionaire. And sometimes I listen to I guess you could call him a motivational speaker or whatever, Gary Vaynerchuk.
Oh, I love Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah. And like he talks about that where he has people on his Tea with Gary V from all over the world, and he had an Irish girl on it recently, and she said something about he was like, okay, so tell me what you're going to do now after this. And she said, I can promise you I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 25. I think she was like 23 or 24. And he was like, and that's 100% not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because that's not, that isn't anything. And I think you really hit that as well. I see so many people now that do things or try things for the sake of maybe making some quick money and stuff like that. I even think at one point I had seen, I don't remember who it was or who they were, but some company rip off like 90% of your designs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember, I can't remember who I spoke to, I emailed in. But just like things like that, it's just such a toxic environment to get into something not for the love of it and just for money or fame or clout or whatever.
Yeah, it's totally opportunistic. I mean, in that case, what you just talked about, we've had many, and hesitate to call them companies, because a lot of these things are just fly by night, where they literally create a website and they just basically skim off of us and other people our designs and sell them, and they run social media ads like it's an official product, and they even copy our text and all the stuff that's on our site, and it's very frustrating. I mean, it's hard because it's hard enough to fight that in addition to everything else out there, and just trying to stay relevant with the stuff that you're doing, but also having to deal with people that are actually stealing your actual artwork it's very frustrating.
Yeah, I can imagine. I don't know why that stuff bothers me as much as it does. It's just, I don't know. And I see a lot of it as well. It's even seeped into places like Amazon now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's everywhere. Amazon, eBay, and all these other pop-up, these print-on-demand sites that make it so easy to upload any images with a little button that says, "Oh, I confirm that I own this." But when we go to fight it, we have to jump through all of these hoops by sending in all of this documentation. And we don't have, one of our team members, Liz, she's in customer service. She spends a few hours a day just sending takedown notices. And that's a lot of time, and it literally is, they're like cockroaches. Or it's like Hydra, actually, you kill one and 7 more pop up. So, it can be soul sucking, but we do as much as we can. We know we're not going to be able to stop them all. We know a lot of our customers know that it's not legitimate. So, we feel bad for the people that fall for it and they end up getting really crappy products, because anything they do end up getting from these sites is not good. But you can only spend so much time doing that. We have to focus on what we can control, and that's the stuff that we put out.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so last few quick fire questions before I let you go. Top 3 favorite movies to watch in this season coming up to Halloween.
Ooh, definitely Halloween, the first one, of course.
Of course.
Silver Bullet is always one that I watch around this time of year. Definitely, I kind of reserve that for a September, October viewing. And the third one, I'd have to say Trick or Treat. That's been, since it was released on home video in 2009, honestly, it was kind of like an instant classic when I saw it. So I have to watch it every year. Yeah,
that's one that I hear a lot, and I'm not sure what's happening with it right now. I know at one point there was supposed to be a sequel and stuff. I don't know whatever happened with that.
I think, I know Michael Dougherty was busy with Godzilla for a while. I think there's been some, I don't want to call it renewed, but I think Trick or Treat has been a little bit more prominent in the last year or two due to an increased exposure in mass market retail, like Spirit. We have Spirit stores here. I don't think you. Yeah. So things like that, I think, have brought Sam into this into popularity with people that didn't know the movie before, because it wasn't a movie that was released in theaters that a lot of people saw. It was really a cult classic made classic by people like us, fans. And, when now you've got somebody who's like maybe 10 years old or whatever, walking into Spirit and seeing this character of Sam on mugs, on, a whole life-size Sam, a mask or whatever, and it becomes this sort of icon of Halloween, which I know is sort of that intentional thing with Mike Dougherty. So I think it's great, and I hope that helps show that there is a desire for a sequel, and that it can happen. But I honestly don't know if it's even in the works.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time where something like that happened. Like, the movie is, 10 years old? More?
Yeah, well, it was made in 2007, but Legendary and Warner Brothers kind of shelved it. Well, Warner Brothers did. I think they were distributing it because they didn't know how to market it. And then it ended up just on Blu-ray. And I don't know if it's VOD too, but I think it was definitely Blu-ray in October of 2009. And I got it the first day because again, horror fans knew. So we got it and watched it. And I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, it's strange to see it. I feel like it's more popular now, 10 years later. And I think a lot of it has to do with what you just talked about. Because even here in Ireland, our horror scene wouldn't be as huge, obviously, as the States or Canada or places like that. Even the UK has a pretty big horror scene. But even here, like I've seen Sam pop up quite a bit, which is kind of bizarre because normally you'll have, the Freddys, Jasons, Michael Myers, and I'm starting to see Sam scattered in there more and more, which is kind of it's kind of cool to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm assuming you're an avid collector of horror merchandise.
Yeah, I've got a few things for sure.
So, what if you could pick one thing? What would you say the coolest thing you have, or your favorite thing that you've got that you've bought so far?
So it's kind of a tie. So basically, I would probably say the thing that came to my mind first was I have an original 35 millimeter print of Halloween.
Nice.
And that, I was never one to get into collecting film reels, but it was an opportunity. I always said if I had, if I could own one film, it would be Halloween. And so that to me, and I also own a pristine 35 millimeter of Halloween 4. And I also own, there's two other movies by a filmmaker named Frank LaLoggia, who made Fear No Evil and a movie called Lady in White. And I don't know if you're familiar with these, but they were both filmed in and around where I live in Rochester, New York. Fear No Evil was a little bit further north, but Lady in White was about 40 minutes away from here. And as a kid, it's just a movie I grew up loving. And I ended up developing a relationship with Frank, a friendship with him over the years, gotten to know him. We've done shirts for Lady in White. And a few years ago, he offered me the chance to purchase the original the first prints ever made for those two movies. I mean, they were struck from the camera negative, and they were the ones that he took to studios to shop around. And I own them now. So they're like in my collection. So it's like a combination of those, because Halloween being my favorite movie, Halloween 4 was the first one I saw in the theater, and then Lady in White being kind of a personal film. And I like Fear No Evil as well, but Lady in White's really just a personal favorite. So kind of having those prints in my possession, I have a lot of stuff that I've collected over the years, but the things that mean the most to me are things like that. And then the one other thing I was going to say real quick is we have a VHS wall in our office, and it's filled up with my old VHS tapes and VHS tapes from some people that work with us and everything. So it looks like an old video store. But the one thing on that wall is this tape of Friday the 13th Part 3, which was my favorite Friday the 13th probably movie, let alone sequel. And the reason why I love that tape so much is because the mom and pop store that I used to rent movies at growing up, I rented that movie a lot. Like I rented almost all my horror movies from there, but I definitely rented that one a lot. And they were going out of business in the early 2000s. And I went in there and they were selling off all their merchandise and or other tapes and stuff. And I grabbed that tape and she looked it up, and we saw the records of when all the times that we had rented it, my friend and I bought it like $7, but that's the tape. Like, it's not even like the same cover or the same, but no, it's the physical item that I used to rent as a kid.
Which is crazy.
I now have. And it's not worth anything, but to me, it's priceless.
It's priceless.
It's this artifact of my childhood. So, just things like that are the things that I hold most precious to me, even though I have tons of figures and albums and other stuff.
Yeah. And I think everybody has kind of those things. Like, you can buy merchandise and you can buy that kind of mass produced, toys and whatever. But I think everybody has like those one or two grails. Just quickly to cut back to it, the Lady in White. Now, I'm not sure. I have a lot of VHS tapes. Did that have I don't know if you can remember, was the artwork for that, I think, was a little girl sitting in front of a window?
It was a boy sitting in front of a half moon shaped window. He has a mask that's on his head.
Yes, I actually think I have a VHS tape.
Yeah, so he's curled up. Yeah, and that's the movie. That's exactly the movie. Wow. It was filmed about 40 minutes away from here. We've been to the filming locations. We've been in that room. The window does no longer exist, but we've been in that classroom and things like that.
So where can everybody find you? What's your I I guess it's just Fright Rags on basically everything, right? Instagram, Twitter.
Yeah, Instagram, Twitter is Fright Rags, all one word. Facebook is just facebook.com/FrightRags. And then, of course, our website is frightrags.com, but it's got a hyphen, so it's fright-rags.com. And that's, you can go there and you can sign up for our newsletter or get text messages when we release stuff, because we're putting out stuff pretty much every week. So we've got a lot coming up.
And right now it's the you've got the Halloween lunchbox and thermos on pre-order until this Sunday, right? This Saturday?
Yep. Yeah, this Sunday night, the 18th, at 11:59, that's Eastern time. Yeah, that'll be up until then. And then once we close that off, we're going to collect all the orders and then, send them to our factory so that they can start making them. And then we'll hopefully start shipping them around February. But, because it takes a month or so or more to get these things produced, and then we got to get them shipped to us, which takes a while. And so there's some time there. But we're excited and to get these into people's hands because they just
it's so cool.
It's just it was so awesome when I saw that thing in person. I was like, oh my God. Great. So.
Yeah, I watched the Instagram video yesterday. It's so cool to see it in person.
It blew me away. Again, you see these things on screen, what it's going to look like. But when I got a sample in the mail a couple months ago, I was like, I just couldn't believe it. Like I was like, this is a real thing. This feels like out of my childhood. And again, if I can get those moments for myself and for us around here, I always hope and pray that it's going to translate to everybody else.
Even the little thing you spoke about, everybody should go and check that video out on Fright Rags Instagram. The thing you spoke about with the distressing around the edge, like just those little touches, it really does make a massive difference. It doesn't feel like something that's store bought from Walmart or Target or somewhere. You can really feel the time. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's those details that we try to, we attempt to put into everything we do because I don't know. I feel like it does say something. Again, we do it because we want it to be right as much as we possibly can. So I'm just glad other people like you notice things like that because we appreciate that because even if some people maybe can't articulate it, even if they get the feeling of it, that's enough for me because that at least shows that they are connected to it.
And then I guess so after that, then that closes on Sunday the 18th. The next drop then is the next drop after that the Halloween Resurrection? Well,
there's a couple more things that we are doing before the Resurrection in Part 6 in 2018 and all those films on the 28th. That's the 28th, but we have a few other things. There's a couple of things I can't mention because they are completely under wraps and surprise. But there is one thing. So next Wednesday, the 21st, we actually have we're re-releasing the Haddonfield hats and the Halloween Dad hat.
Nice.
And we're also re-releasing a very limited version of the Haddonfield varsity hoodie. We had done these back in, we've done these, it's a year and a half, 2 years ago. No, we did them 2 years ago. They sold out in a heartbeat. And then we re-released them for our halfway to Halloween promotion, which was earlier this year in April and May. And we had that as an open pre-order. And basically what we've got left over is what we're going to be putting up on Wednesday. So it is a limited release. They're already done. This isn't like a pre-order where we're going to make them afterward. This is what we had left over from that run, in addition to the hats, the Haddonfield hats, the wool ones, and the Halloween Dad hats. We reordered those.
Nice. Okay, so that's coming next Wednesday, the 21st, is it?
21st, yeah.
Okay, and then the following Wednesday then is what I need to look out for, the Halloween Resurrection.
Exactly.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know I've taken up a lot of your time tonight, and I'll make sure to put the links and stuff in the descriptions on everywhere it's posted.
Great. No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on.
No problem, man. Thank you.
Support First Class Horror on Patreon for as little as $1. Can't get enough of the horror? Carve yourself a deal from official merchandise, only on Teespring. Join us on all social media
at First Class Horror.
We have such sights to show you.